Life has a way of teaching lessons in the most unexpected ways. Some betrayals are minor, the kind that sting but eventually fade. Others cut so deeply that they leave scars, changing the course of everything that follows. People hear countless stories of deception, of lies, of love gone wrong, and they think they've heard it all. But what my wife did to me wasn't just another tale of betrayal. It was something else entirely. A single choice she made altered the entire trajectory of my life. I never saw it coming, and I doubt you will either. Back then, everything was going well. I had built a business from the ground up, and for a long time, success came naturally. Money was never an issue, and I had the freedom to make decisions without hesitation. Life felt stable, secure. It was during this time that I met Anna. It was at some event, one that has long since faded from my memory, but I remember her. The way she spoke, the way she carried herself, something about her intrigued me. We exchanged contacts, and from that day forward, we kept in touch. At first, our conversations were casual. A few texts, the occasional meet-up, nothing too serious. But the more time we spent together, the more I realized she was someone I could see a future with. It felt natural, seamless. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were in a relationship. Marriage was the next step, and when the day came, it was simple yet perfect in its own way. I stood there, looking at the woman I had chosen, truly believing I had made the right decision. The early years of our marriage were everything I had hoped for. Anna had everything she could ever want, and I made sure of that. She never had to worry about bills, responsibilities, or financial struggles. If she wanted to travel, we traveled. If she wanted something, I got it for her without a second thought. It wasn't about spoiling her, it was just how I saw my role as a husband. I was the provider, and I took pride in that. For a time, life felt solid. I had a wife I adored, a home, and a business that was thriving. I thought we were a team, partners in every sense of the word. I had no reason to believe otherwise. But life has a cruel way of reminding you that nothing is ever as stable as it seems. A few years into our marriage, my business began to struggle. At first, I convinced myself it was just a rough patch, nothing I couldn't handle. Every business had its ups and downs, and I had overcome challenges before. But this time, things were different. The money stopped flowing as it once had, and no matter how hard I fought to turn things around, success remained just out of reach. At first, Anna appeared concerned. She asked questions, wanting to know if things would improve. But when it became clear that I couldn't fix everything overnight, that concern faded. Her disappointment was palpable, her patience thin. It was as if, in her eyes, I had become something lesser, just another man who had failed her. I remember the night I finally told her about the house. I had refinanced it, using the money to try and save my business. It was a risk, but in my mind, a necessary one. I refused to let everything I had built crumble without a fight. When I sat her down and explained, I barely made it through my sentence before I saw the fury in her eyes. "You did what?" she snapped, her voice razor-sharp. I had expected anger. After all, it was our home. But I hadn't expected the way she looked at me after that moment, as if she no longer recognized the man she had married. That night didn't just make her mad, it made her lose all respect for me. From that day forward, everything changed. She didn't just argue with me, she mocked me. There was a sharpness in her words, a condescending tone that hadn't been there before. Every conversation became laced with sarcasm, little jabs disguised as casual remarks. Even in front of others, she made subtle digs at my expense. At first, I told myself it was just frustration, that once things improved, she would go back to the woman I had known. But as the months passed, doubt crept in. I stopped trying to explain myself. What was the point? Every attempt to make her understand only led to more arguments. So I buried myself in work, trying to salvage what I could. But even as I did, I couldn't shake the nagging thought that she was thinking of leaving me. Or worse, that she was already seeing someone else. I had no proof, so I ignored the suspicion. I pushed the thoughts aside, not realizing just how much worse things would get. Anna's friend was getting married, a lavish destination wedding in some remote location. When she first brought it up, I barely glanced up from my laptop. My mind was consumed with trying to fix the mess my business had become. A wedding, especially one that required travel, was the last thing on my list of priorities. I told her I wasn't interested and assumed that would be the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. Anna didn't just want me to go, she demanded it. When I refused, she threw down an ultimatum. "If you won't be my plus one, I'll just take someone else. At that point, I was exhausted. I didn't have the energy to argue. I didn't even care anymore. But I knew Anna well enough to realize that if I let her go alone, she would use it as an excuse to do whatever she wanted. And if something happened, she would turn around and say, "Well, you didn't come, so what did you expect?" I didn't want to deal with that kind of headache. So, just to keep the peace, I agreed to go. I had no idea that decision would lead to the moment that would change everything. Agreeing to go to the wedding felt like a reluctant compromise, but in a way, stepping away from the relentless weight of my daily stress was refreshing. I had spent so much time drowning in numbers, spreadsheets, and failed deals that I had forgotten what it was like to simply exist outside of my problems. The drive was long, but for the first time in a long while, I had a moment to breathe. For hours, I watched the world roll past, letting the hum of the road lull my mind into something close to peace. When we finally arrived, I had to admit the place was breathtaking. The wedding was set at a high-end resort, the kind you only see in luxury travel magazines. Every detail was curated to perfection. Pristine white flowers lined the walkways, candlelit tables glowed under the open sky, and the ocean stretched endlessly beyond the cliffs. It was the kind of setting that made the rest of the world fade away, if only for a moment. I played my part that night. I smiled when expected, engaged in polite conversations with strangers whose names I would never remember, and did my best to pretend that things between Anna and me were still normal. And for a fleeting moment, it almost felt that way. But illusions have a way of shattering at the worst possible time. On the drive home, reality settled back in. The wedding had been a distraction, but nothing had truly changed. Anna and her two friends filled the car with light-hearted chatter about the night's events while I stayed quiet, my mind already returning to the endless calculations of how to salvage what was left of my business. At some point along the highway, the fuel gauge dipped low, so I pulled into a gas station. It was one of those small, isolated stops with a single convenience store and a handful of customers coming and going. As I filled the tank, I figured I might as well grab a drink and use the restroom before we got back on the road. "I'll be right back," I told Anna, but she barely acknowledged me, too caught up in conversation with her friends. I stepped inside, the cool air of the store offering a brief reprieve from the heat. After using the restroom, I walked back out, expecting to see the car where I had left it. But the parking spot was empty. I stopped in my tracks, glancing around. For a second, I thought maybe they had just moved it as a joke, maybe parked around the corner to mess with me. Any moment now, I expected the car to roll back into view, Anna smirking at the wheel, making some sarcastic remark about how long I had taken. But as the minutes stretched on, the truth settled in like a slow-moving storm. They weren't coming back. I checked my pockets out of instinct, even though I already knew I had left my phone and wallet in the car. I had nothing on me, just the clothes on my back. A cold wave of panic crept in, tightening around my chest. I forced myself to stay calm, to think. Approaching the gas station attendant, an older man barely paying attention to his newspaper, I cleared my throat. "Hey, my wife and her friends just left me here by mistake. Can I use your phone to call someone?" I kept my voice even, controlled. The man didn't even look up. "No phone for customers." I let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "No, I mean, this is an emergency. They left me behind. I just need to make a quick call." With an exasperated sigh, he finally lifted his gaze. "No phone," he repeated before turning the page of his newspaper. I stepped back, frustration bubbling beneath my skin. If he wouldn't help, I'd find someone who would. I approached a few customers, explaining the situation, but the moment they realized I had no phone, no wallet, nothing to prove who I was, their expressions shifted. Suspicion. Caution. Some shook their heads. Others muttered a quick "sorry, man" before walking away. I couldn't blame them. If a disheveled man approached me at a gas station in the middle of nowhere with no proof of anything, I'd be wary too. The hours dragged on. I paced back and forth, scanning every set of approaching headlights, hoping, praying, that it was them coming back. But the road remained empty. Hunger gnawed at my stomach. My throat was parched. The gas station, eerie enough in daylight, turned into something out of a nightmare as the sky darkened. I had nowhere to go. No money for a motel. No one to call. No way to leave. By sheer exhaustion, I eventually gave up. I found an old wooden bench near the side of the building, curled up, and tried to sleep. The cold bit through my clothes, and every sound in the night kept me on edge, footsteps crunching gravel, distant engines revving, the occasional murmur of passing strangers. But nothing was louder than the thought echoing in my head. She really left me. Morning came with a sharp reminder of my situation, an aching body, a dry throat, and a stomach that felt like a hollow pit. I had barely slept, every hour dragging by in a slow, torturous haze. I spent the day desperately trying to get someone, anyone, to help. I approached strangers, explained what had happened, begged to borrow a phone. But I could see the doubt in their eyes, the hesitation. Without a way to prove who I was, I might as well have been just another drifter looking for a handout. By midday, my luck shifted. A trucker had pulled into the station, a burly man in his late 50s with a face etched by years on the road. I approached him, telling my story one more time, my voice hoarse from thirst and exhaustion. He didn't answer right away, just studied me with an unreadable expression. Finally, he sighed. "Get in. I ain't promising anything, but I'll drop you at the next city. That's the best I can do." I had never felt more grateful in my life. Climbing into the truck, I sank into the worn leather seat, the first semblance of relief washing over me. The ride was mostly silent. He asked a few questions, but I kept my answers short, too drained to explain everything. He didn't press. When we reached a larger city, I stepped out of the truck and muttered my thanks. My first priority was finding a way to contact someone I could trust. After what felt like an eternity of searching, I finally managed to reach a cousin, a distant relative who was shocked to hear from me but didn't ask too many questions. He sent me money for food and transportation, giving me the lifeline I so desperately needed. By the end of that day, I was no longer stranded. But I wasn't free either. Because no matter how far I traveled from that gas station, one truth remained: Anna had abandoned me. And I would never be the same again. For the first time in years, I had a roof over my head, stability beneath my feet, and a sense of control over my own life. But something inside me had changed. After 2 days of being stranded, left to fend for myself with nothing but the clothes on my back, something in me hardened. It wasn't just anger, it was finality. I wasn't hurt anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. Anna had made her choice the moment she left me at that gas station, and I made mine the moment I decided not to call her. I didn't reach out. I didn't try to explain. I didn't check in with our mutual friends to see if she had even bothered to look for me. As far as I was concerned, that chapter of my life was over, and I made sure of it. The house we had shared wasn't hers, it was owned by my business. And since my business was already crumbling, I took the last piece of control I had left. I declared bankruptcy. The house, gone. Foreclosed. I knew exactly what that meant for her. I knew she'd be forced out, left scrambling for a place to go. And I didn't care. Her betrayal became my fuel, burning away any remnants of sentimentality I had left for her. In the days and weeks that followed, I threw myself into work. It didn't matter what the job was, if it paid, I did it. I spent sleepless nights clawing my way back from nothing, rebuilding myself from the ground up. The first year was brutal. I had nothing. No safety net, no luxuries, no security. Just sheer determination and an unshakable refusal to let my downfall be the end of me. Then, somewhere along the way, I met Jessica. She saw me for who I was, not who I used to be. She didn't care about the past, about what I had lost. With her, I didn't have to pretend. By the second year, my life started to resemble something stable. I found steady work. By the third, I had my own place, not a mansion, not the luxury I once knew, but a home. By the fifth year, I was whole again. I wasn't rich like I had been before, but I was comfortable. I had a career, a relationship, and, most importantly, peace. Anna was nothing more than a ghost in my past, a memory I had long since buried. I hadn't thought about her in years, and I had no intention of changing that. But then, one evening, my phone rang. An unknown number flashed across the screen. I hesitated before answering, curiosity getting the better of me. The moment I heard the voice on the other end, I wished I hadn't. It was Anna. For a second, my mind struggled to process it, as if her voice was a distant echo from a life that no longer belonged to me. She barely got a sentence out before I cut her off. The sound of her pleading, the desperation in her tone, it didn't move me. "Don't ever call me again," I said, then hung up. But she didn't stop. The calls kept coming. At first, I ignored them, assuming she'd get the message. But when I finally checked my phone, I saw over 100 missed calls. I blocked her number, thinking that would be the end of it. I was wrong. She started calling from different numbers, each one an attempt to break through the silence I had given her. It became relentless, like a desperate gambler trying to win back lost money. Every time my phone rang, I knew it was her. I put it on silent, refusing to acknowledge her existence. And then, a few days later, she showed up at my door. When I opened it, there she stood, Anna, tears in her eyes, looking at me like I was the missing piece in her life. The moment our eyes met, she broke down, sobbing as if she were the victim in all of this. "It was a misunderstanding," she choked out between tears. "Leaving you at that gas station, it wasn't what you think. It was a prank. I didn't know your phone was in the car." She swore up and down that she had come back for me but couldn't find me, that she had been suffering for years, tormented by not knowing where I was. "Do you know how much I suffered?" she sobbed. "Not knowing if you were dead or alive." I just stood there, watching her unravel, her words nothing more than a desperate performance. And then, as if flipping a switch, she changed tactics. "Why didn't you try harder to contact me?" she demanded, her voice laced with indignation. "You just left. You didn't even try to fix things." That was when I knew exactly what this was. This wasn't an apology. This wasn't remorse. This was desperation. And when she looked at me with those pleading eyes, swearing she never moved on, that she had waited for me all these years, I realized something. I didn't feel a damn thing for her anymore. And that told me everything I needed to know. I asked her to leave. Later, when I finally learned the full truth about what happened, it didn't shock me. It simply confirmed what I had already suspected deep down. That night at the gas station, she hadn't just forgotten about me. She wasn't planning to come back. She wanted me gone. She wanted an escape from the marriage without the hassle of a real breakup. And while I had been drowning, scraping together the shattered pieces of my life, she had someone else. At the time, I ignored the signs, dismissed the gut feeling that something was off. But the truth had a way of surfacing. When I never returned, she moved on as if I had never existed. And at first, it worked. She had the freedom she wanted. But reality has a way of catching up with people. When I declared bankruptcy and the house was foreclosed, she was blindsided. She had grown comfortable living in a home that was never truly hers, never realizing that her security was tethered to me. And when that security vanished, she found herself adrift. She tried to maintain the illusion of her old life, burning through her savings, drowning in debt just to keep up appearances. And when the man she had left me for saw that she was no longer an asset, but a liability, he did what selfish people do best. He left. That was when the downfall truly began. She bounced from friend to friend, looking for a place to stay. And when there was no one left to turn to, when she had exhausted every lifeline, she started looking for me. Not because she loved me. Not because she regretted what she had done. But because she had run out of options. Looking back, I've asked myself countless times, could I have done something differently? Could I have salvaged something from the wreckage she left behind? But the truth is, some betrayals leave no room for second chances. So I ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have let her back in? Would you have given her a second chance? Or would you have walked away, just like I did? Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: real love doesn't disappear the moment life gets hard. True loyalty doesn't come with conditions. And most importantly, self-respect means knowing when to walk away. Even when a part of you wants to stay. Because sometimes, the best closure isn't a confrontation. It's moving forward and never looking back.